Hello everyone, and welcome to our very special 100th episode. We are live in the Giant Brain HQ with some special guests and some of our lovely community as an audience. You're going to witness firsthand exactly how ramshackle Jamie and I are still after all these years. Not everything the live audience hears tonight will make its way into the main cast, or even the extended cast that our lovely patrons get to hear. Couple of pieces of business before we get to the cast proper. We are, of course, recording everything through the Craig bot that's in the audience. We're going to be covering the latest news as usual, followed by a Q&A with the team that will be conducted by our good friend Richard from We're Not Wizards, who is up on stage with us.
Hello.
Hello, Richard.
Hello.
Before we go any further, it's my great pleasure to welcome back to the cast, after numerous interdimensional travels, the one and only Sam Maggs. Sam's back!
It's me!
Hey! It's Sam! Yay. How you doing, Sam?
Hello, I'm very good. Thank you very much. I've enjoyed everything so far. It's taken a very different direction, and apparently we're not going in that direction, which is a shame. But I'm here for board games, so let's go.
Yeah, the Soupcast is for another thing altogether, but we'll talk about that afterwards. You know, maybe you and I can start Soupcast and get that sorted out.
You hearing this, Richard? You hearing this?
Yeah,
episode 100.
Split off.
Yeah,
splitters.
I'm just not. I'm just gonna say, I'm tempted to go.
Anyway, you know who everyone else is. I am, of course, Ian McAllister.
I'm Jamie Adams.
There you go.
He's up to his face in fish.
I'm up to my face in soup and fish cakes.
And this is Brainwaves episode 100, bringing you the best in tabletop gaming news. These are the headlines for the week of the 13th of June, 2022. Dungeons & Dragons power couple comes under fire. We will not have our cake and eat it. And Asmodee gets funds from a controversial source. All this and more on this episode of Brainwaves. And of course, it falls to me to do this thing. Jamison Stone and Satine.
Do you do incidental music then? Do we do a
There is incidental music, but Ian sticks it on in post.
I've never figured out how to do it in a live recording. I'd like to, because that'd be kind of interesting.
There'll be ways.
There will be ways. I'm not sure if there'd be ways to do it through Discord, but yeah, there's definitely ways to do it. I need to look into that at some point.
A stream deck or something.
I think lack of commitment here. This is what I'm detecting. But anyway, you were saying
it's 100 episodes.
I've invited you onto this cast to be judged. You're not here to assess the podcast.
Oh, I don't remember getting the rules document. I'm looking at the document just now. It doesn't say anything at all about any of my conduct and how it should be, because there's enough people doing dodgy conduct at the moment, isn't there, Ian?
There is indeed, Richard. Jamison Stone and Satine Phoenix are the power couple of the Dungeons & Dragons scene. The couple established Apotheosis Studios to put out some of their role-playing work and are involved in seminars across the globe and various other ventures stemming from their actual play series. Just yesterday, we are recording on Friday the 10th of June, a Twitter account called @NerdyTattooer released details of his experience providing tattoos for Jamison and Satine. This is the account of a tattoo artist called Chad Rowe, who is very sought after as an artist, and I'm going to summarise the thread as best I can, but we will provide links to all of the originals in the show notes. Chad shared messages between himself and Jamison about a contract related to the tattoos. This had come about as they'd been flown out by Jamison and Satine to spend 3 days tattooing the couple. No contract had been mentioned in the original commission of the tattoos. During the time they spent with the couple, Chad mentioned a contract he had entered into with another commission to protect the uniqueness of that particular tattoo. Jamison showed some interest in this at the time of the work. After completion of the work on Jamison and Satine, a conversation about contracts took place, and the conversation from Jamison's end was less than cordial. During the exchange, Chad sends over a copy of the contract he had mentioned in their chats at the couple's home. Upon receiving this, Jamison can only be described as to go off on one. Those are my words, not anyone else's. He calls Chad unprofessional several times and repeatedly belittles his efforts to sort out what they want from the contract. Chad says in the thread that no contract was asked for up front, and goes on to share the exchanges between himself, Jamison and Satine that can only be described as incredibly condescending. This thread has sparked a couple of others detailing their experiences with the couple. A Twitter user called Tristan @TheTrisket recounted the experience of he and his partner working with the couple at a convention. Tristan and his partner Katie had hired the couple to be on their stream at PAX West as they went around and interviewed folk on the show floor. What transpired was that Tristan and Katie were basically treated like Satine and Jamison's assistants, belittled constantly, talked down to, and made to feel awful. I won't detail everything, as it is a long thread, but at one point they mentioned being insulted because they had given Satine and Jamison the wrong snacks that Satine and Jamison had themselves given the couple to carry. Jason Azevedo, involved with some actual play series the couple had been involved with, also listed abuses he had witnessed firsthand, some between Jamison and Satine, some between the couple and others. And there are many more, we are sure. After all this had come out, Jamison posted an apology to Chad on his Facebook profile, which claims he had a hard upbringing, has been diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress disorder. That is a real thing, I went and looked it up. It goes on to mention that they are in couples counselling, that he is ashamed he let his trauma and disorder cause him to lash out at Chad and Satine, and thanks Chad for holding him accountable. This is pretty fresh breaking news, so we haven't had a chance to reach out for comment for any of the parties involved, and as I mentioned above, we'll link to all the Twitter threads where these abuses are detailed, and Jamison's apology post as well. I've had a bigger read into what's been going on behind the scenes. I saw some replies to the apology saying that Jamison was exhibiting the same behaviour he's apologising for as recently as last week. And it seems to me like this kind of abuse behind the scenes has been going on for a good while. There's a few people who have come out of the woodwork saying, yeah, my experience with this couple is terrible. People haven't spoken up for fear of repercussions. And in some of the threads, Jamison makes those threats explicit due to their sort of power within the Dungeons and Dragons community. They are powerful names in the industry, that's undeniable. And as far as I'm concerned, they should never work again because their abuses seem to be absolutely terrible. Origins are hosting them right now because Origins is going on. Several of their panels have been cancelled, as is my understanding, but Satine is still posting video and things like that from the fair. Yeah. Awful people being awful. Anybody got any comments on this?
I think it comes down to people, no matter where they feel they're going to be coming from, is kind of like if they feel they have to say something, is to speak up. Because as it seems to be proven again and again and again, whether you go back through like the tabletop industry itself having some, pretty bad actors, is that you get one person kind of stepping forward and going, this person's been horrific to me. And then out of the woodwork, there's another 5 or 6 people that all come out and go, they are. They're absolutely terrible. Yeah. But I think the other thing is as well, is this also comes down to the thing is how many other people have kind of looked on this and known that they've been terrible people, but have also done kind of very little about it. Because there's bound to be people that come out and go, oh yeah, I saw them do this, but I never said anything, kind of thing, because of the power. So, I don't know. It seems to happen again and again and again, but it seems to be is certain types of people in the way they kind of gain success usually do it on the backs of others. And I think once you find that's a route to success, it's very, very easy to maintain that type of attitude. It's very, very easy to maintain that kind of modus operandi and belittle other people and push down on people. You see it in all walks of business as well. It's just a question of, in this kind of space where you've not got like the big human resources department, it's almost unfortunately on the individual to speak up and say, look, this person's a terrible person. Who else is, has anybody else got the same experience? So,
and there may be a myriad of reasons why someone isn't speaking up, and that's completely understandable. But it may be the best thing to do to put an end to it, to put an end to future, abuses.
I'm not. I don't know. I kind of, from my own background, I find people that kind of abuse a position of power to be kind of in the nicest possible way, kind of like the worst kind of people. And I'm guessing that Chad themselves, they're in a position where I'm guessing that with their position of power themselves, they've got an ability to basically turn around to Satine and Jamison and tell them to go and tattoo themselves, knowing that the fact that he's probably can turn around he can score that person off the order book and not have to worry because he's now able to phone up somebody else who's in the waiting list to say, hey, I've got space for you, come on, basically, I guess. And I guess the thing with other people in different, if you're in a more precarious position, like these, the other couple that were helping them at the event, maybe they weren't, maybe this was them a chance to work with somebody who was potentially going to give them a kind of a leg up, the Tristan and Katie. Maybe they thought as a way to leak up. So at the time they thought, well, I'm just going to let them do what they need to do, kind of thing.
I mean, that thread is basically that. Yeah, they basically wanted to do a stream on PAX West, and they wanted to get like someone who's a bit more well known than them on their stream in order to attract views, which is perfectly reasonable. And then it all went kind of horribly wrong, and that is basically hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what happened. It was like basically everything got everything.
I'd like to see somebody like that comes out and it's shown they've got a good thing. They've done a good thing for the community or something like that, and they say, "Do you know the reason that I did that good thing for everybody was because I had a really terrible experience as a child, and therefore I'm suffering from." I'm suffering from complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which meant I went out and tried to help as many people as possible, as opposed to being the kind of the horrific person that does a whole pile of crappy things and then turns around and says, oh, I've been a crappy person because crappy things were done to me. You never kind of hear it on the kind of the switch around where say the people go, hey, that Ian McAllister, he's a really sound guy. And it's like, yeah, because he had some issues, but he's worked through them and he's proven himself to try and be a better person, as opposed to Ian's been a terrible man. And and he comes out with excuses, which just seems to be a pile of excuses. So yeah, they could probably do one, I think. Put them in the go do one box.
Hi folks, this is Ian in the editing studio. I just wanted to do a little drop in on the Satine and Jamison story we just covered. On the 10th of June, the day after recording, Apotheosis Studios put out a statement on their website saying that Jamison Stone has resigned as the CEO. We'll bring you more, I'm sure, on that in the next cast. Thank you. Anyway, Jamie, news from the world of baking.
Yes, now, the Great British Bake Off. I'm sure people have heard of it. It kind of does exactly what it says on the tin if I'm mixing my products. It's a competition to find the best amateur bakers in the country. And I'm going to say it, I think it's somewhat of a cultural juggernaut. Now, it's true though. It is true. We reported on the last podcast that the show was getting a board game adaptation. But now it seems that has... well, to use the lexicon from the show, it's gone a bit soggy. The TV show that aired in the US and Canada, it's the same show, but it's known as the Great British Baking Show. Now, Ravensburger, who's making the game, they have the rights to that name, but not to the Great British Bake Off. Which right now means that, although the game is based in the UK, the show will not be... yeah, sorry. Let me do that again.
Okay.
This means that although the show is based in the UK, and therefore the game technically is based in the UK as well, the game will not be available in the UK, at least for now. Now, Ravensburger, I mean, that's a company that's really, I was going to say on the up and up, but they've always really been on the up. But with a design team like Prospero Hall behind them, with things like Villainous and Jaws and Top Gun, very apt, where you have the flying the jets and you have the volleyball moments in the game. I mean, hopefully they can bring it here, because that'd be a real coup for them.
I mean, considering their involvement in IPs, it just seems like a massive oversight that they can't put it out in the UK. Very strange. But yeah, I mean, like Prosper Hall are great.
Thing,
like their tie-ins are great. Spider-Man thing?
Well, it's like Spider-Man and Sony, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yes,
you know what I mean? It's like you have the license. If you have the license to control it, a control of IP is a funny thing, isn't it? It's like the reason why we don't have X-Men and stuff like that all together in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's almost like you've tried to bake a Wolverine cake, and you're not allowed to bring your Wolverine cake to let Paul Hollywood not only have a finger of your sponges, but also potentially give you a handshake afterwards.
Family show, Richard. Family show.
I think you'll find. This is all stuff that has been said.
He is checking the firmness of the sponges, so the only person that's making smut out of this is you. But so in the handshake afterwards, and you've made me lose my thread. But basically, what I'm saying is there's no Wolverine cakes in the Bake Off tent because of IP restrictions due to the Marvel Universe and Fox So it's all a big mess. They need to get over it. I mean, who would have thought that the world of IP baking would have caused so much hassle?
Well, there was on the subject, there was Kim Joy's Magic Bakery, who was a contestant on the Great British Bake Off, and it took a wee while to come out, and I believe it has come out now.
Yeah, I think so.
And apparently it's not a bad wee game, but yeah, it took a wee while.
Yeah, I guess there's always sorts of weird sort of legal shenanigans around IPs, and I guess we're going to see a bit more of that, like games released in different countries, because we're seeing a lot more IP based games that used to be like terrible. Like a lot of IP board games were very, very bad. But
hang on, Ian. I'm gonna put you up there a sec.
There was a lot of bad tie-ins.
We're going to see more IP games. We've seen lots of IP games over many years.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a ramp up in that though, especially with people like Prospero Hall producing all the film tie-in ones. We're seeing like companies like Mantic, for instance, produce computer game inspired board games. I think we're seeing a lot more of that.
Are you saying this is leading to Bake Off Talisman?
Well, yeah, obviously. That's what everyone wants, right?
You actually need to bake the layers that surround the game for the expansions. You don't actually get a board game expansion. You get like a recipe card. And it's like
ready to bake
a bag of flour.
Warning you a crispy base and avoiding a soggy bottom. There's an entire dungeon crawling thing based around baking, isn't there? And people haven't tapped into.
Yeah. There was a Kickstarter a couple of years back that was a board game, like board games you could bake. I'm sure, like basically food-based board games. I can't remember who made it, but there was a book about like
I think that was a fever dream that you had.
Unfortunately,
it's not. I'm putting in the show notes. I'll find it. But
I need you to find this because I'm fascinated. I'm pretty sure this was like when you weren't feeling well that long ago. You woke up in the middle of the night and went after Bakery Dungeon.
Right. Moving on from Bakery Dungeon to something a little bit more serious and financial news, which I'm not doing this time. So, Ian, on you go.
Yeah, I've stolen Jamie's financial pants or whatever it is. I forget. There's a style note somewhere. Back in episode 94, we covered the acquisition by the Embracer Group of Asmodee, the biggest board games company in the world. Embracer owns a variety of other publishers, including Dark Horse Publishing, and most recently, several parts of Square Enix, including the studio that makes Tomb Raider, Crystal Dynamics. Well, big companies on the move attract investment, and it seems that Embracer recently got an injection of cash from Saudi Arabia. First reported on website Polygon by Charlie Hall, the investment comes from Saudi Arabia's Sovereign Wealth Fund. The move seems to be part of a push by the kingdom to diversify its investments, as most of its current income is generated through oil. Saudi Arabia's public investment fund owns Savvy Gaming Group that made the investment. It puts Saudi Arabia as the second largest investor in Embracer, and it seems likely that some of this money will filter down through Embracer into Asmodee and some of the board game companies we all know and love. As I'm sure our audience is aware, Saudi Arabia is notorious for its human rights abuses, and in most recent memory, they have been accused of war crimes in Yemen, and the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi was a high-profile case worldwide. I guess it begs the question, like, how much research should you do before buying a product? Like, what sort of ethical and moral considerations are there behind, like, purchasing games? Is anyone going to care about this kind of thing? I guess a bit, but this kind of high-level investment is quite common in big companies, and it's going to become more common, I guess, as the board game industry grows. Anybody got any thoughts?
Saudi Arabia's move on this is to try and divert most of their profits, or because a lot of their economy comes from oil, that they're trying to now get money from other places, which, makes sense because oil is a finite resource, funnily enough.
Board games are infinite.
Board games are infinite, it's true.
Yeah. Just you can keep making board games forever. They're actually a perpetual motion machine.
Should the Saudis then start making board games?
On you go, Richard. On you go.
Should they start making board games instead?
Listen, if there's a robust design studio that wants to start out of Riyadh, I'd be all for that. Why not?
Yeah, for sure.
Give it a shot.
I've seen this before, and I see it every time, like, Nestle hits the news, or Monsanto hits the news, or, any of these Mars companies, or Coca-Cola hits the news or something like that, and they do something terrible. And people turn around and go, right, that's it, I'm boycotting them. And then somebody produces this chart and says, okay, well, this company's part of this company, that's part of this company, that's part of this company. So literally for you to boycott these products, you literally have to live in a tent for the rest of your life. And I think that it's very, very difficult for you to be. I mean, let's face it, you could even look at the point of view that it's like, well, technically, still people are using Kickstarter to fund their projects, and Kickstarter itself seems to be kind of heading down the dubious thing of blockchain and stuff like that. You know, are you right to still support kind of projects from really, really nice people that you really, really like if they're using the kind of like the Kickstarter model? I think it's really, really difficult. I think if you've got the ability to do that, then that's fine. But at the end of the day, it's like, well, what's their investment being used for? What part of the business is it going into? What is that money actually going to be used for itself? I mean, a lot of this times investments type of things, these big companies put investment into stuff, and usually it's just to buy a whole pile of other things. It doesn't always, they say investment, but usually they'll put money into Embracer, and they'll probably be sending Embracer out to buy up other companies, as opposed to be ploughing money into end product that's going to hit people's hands. I am being very serious, aren't I? I'm going to start doing armpit farts.
I think, unfortunately, it's
that's the kind of show we are.
Yeah, I was going to say it's the orbit we're kind of in, which is there are times for being silly, but it's when we have to cover like things that are kind of important. There's. You want to make a sarcastic comment, but you don't want. I mean, I'll make not a sarcastic comment, but a silly comment, which was Campbell, who's listening, is in the audience, has just posted. I'm sure during the pandemic there was a point where Nuln Oil, which was a paint produced by Games Workshop, was worth more than actual crude oil pound for pound.
Seems like
so. If that and I think I remember reading that. Might be true. If that is true, Mohammed bin Salman, if you're listening, old MBS, big fan, I know, friend of the show. Invest in Games Workshop.
No,
what's the worst that could happen?
I'd like to make it very clear to everyone listening, including the CIA, that he's not a friend of the show.
Of course he's not a friend of the show. You know my opinions on...
Yeah. I remember there being a skit in The Good Place, basically, where in one of the later seasons, there's a whole thing about it's basically impossible to be like a purely good person based on like your purchase and that kind of thing, because it's so hard to know who's involved with things, and it's impossible to do that amount of research because you just don't have the time.
True, but I have a number of food allergies, which means I can avoid a lot of Nestle and Mars, so I'm not complaining.
Well, I'm the same. I'm pretty much dairy-free, gluten-free here, so I mean, I am technically just living in a house as opposed to living in a cave. I mean, that then does justify stealing, shoplifting of board games.
I think that's for a different cast, philosophy cast. Anyway, let's move on, shall we? Jamie, I'll give you back the financial pants, and you can talk about Hasbro.
Okay, but first, the rest of the news. More updates for you. Back in episode 93, we covered the Hasbro investor who had suggested that Hasbro should spin off Wizards of the Coast into a separate company. That investor was Alta Fox Capital Management. It owns about 2.5% of the company, which is worth about $325 million, give or take. Alta Fox also wanted to add new members to the company's board that it proposes. In response, Hasbro put out the following letter on Wednesday the 18th of May from the CEO, Chris Cox. The Hasbro board nominees have the right balance of skill sets, experiences, and fresh perspectives to guide our new CEO, Chris Cox, and our management team in executing our long-term strategy for the benefit of all shareholders, according to the letter to shareholders, which was obtained by CNBC. Alta Fox is attempting to replace 3 of our highly skilled and experienced directors with nominees who lack relevant industry expertise and, in our view, possess inferior skill sets. Hasbro has dismissed many of the nominees Alta Fox put forward as having insufficient experience in the toys and games market, and that, quoting from the letter, in our view, Alta Fox's nominees, given their limited relevant qualifications, would not be additive to the board in helping Hasbro achieve its long-term strategy. Hasbro lists a lot of the failures of the board members that Altifox are proposing and seems adamant that the spin-off of Wizards should not proceed considering the current strength of Dungeons & Dragons and Magic the Gathering. On June the 8th, the vote went ahead, and ICV2 reported that Hasbro defeated the efforts by Altifox to put members on the board. The win was by a substantial margin, apparently. In a statement accompanying the announcement, Hasbro said, "Our directors will be instrumental to Chris as he undertakes a strategic review of the business and outlines our go-forward strategy to position Hasbro for long-term success and delivery of shareholder value." So what this was a big, long, nice try, lads, jog on.
Yeah, we're just going to see more of this as the hobby grows. We're going to see investment in board game companies as they attract bigger people with eyes on them and wanting a bit of that slice of that pie, I guess.
And Sam, what's your opinion on this?
Hello. It goes back into a lot of like the previous piece of news as well with the Embracer Group stuff, is that and I think in the grand scheme of things as well, this is kind of fine in a sense, but like these people aren't in it for board games, right?
No.
These people are there for money. The Embracer Group are, in that previous piece of news, they're buying a board game company, but they're not buying it because they love board games. It's because it's a profitable thing. And this is exactly what this is. You've got an investment management thing coming on. It says they own about 2.5% of the company and they just want more influence in that company. Obviously, Hasbro's rebuttal has been actually very games focused, which people obviously really like. It's a good show for them, obviously. But yeah, as Ian said, it's only going to happen more. I think it's all natural business stuff, isn't it? But I suppose for the moment, good on them for winning it.
Just having a little look at not who owns Embracer Group, what Embracer Group owns, including things like Asmodee. Things that are interesting, like Coffee Stain Studios and Ghost Ship Games, who make the game Deep Rock Galactic, the video game and coming board game that I know some of us are big fans of. Dark Horse Comics and Entertainment, Gearbox Software. Yeah, this is oofed.
As I say, Embracer have gone on a massive spending spree. Somebody's handed them a blank checkbook and they've basically gone out and bought lots and lots of little things. Like we'll have, it's like Countdown. I'll have one off the top, two off the middle, and the three off the bottom, please, if you don't mind. And that's what they've been doing. So it comes back to you can't try and claim a moral high ground here because unless you're really, really aware of what they've been buying, there's a chance you're going to be putting money in somebody's back pocket that's doing something a bit dodgy.
So I'm afraid I don't think any of us who are up on stage right now attended the UK Games Expo over the past weekend or so.
It's rubbish.
For various reasons.
It's rubbish.
But
it was rubbish.
Terrible, never going again.
Full of nerds. Full of people I wouldn't be seen within public.
Well, this is why you appear with them on a podcast.
The detriment to society. Literally, people
UK Games,
the street of
UK Games Expo had its. Why am I doing this? This is Ian's story.
I can do it if you want.
Yes, indeed, it's mine.
I can do it.
Go ahead. Yeah, you do it.
I could do it, or Sam could do it. I'll do it, and then Sam could do the next one. Okay, so this is
do one.
Well, go on then. You could do one.
I wouldn't be good at I'm not going to be good at the next one. Have you seen what the next one is?
Yes, I have.
Come on, hey, calm down.
I can do this one.
Well, do this one then. You don't have to change the name of it.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it.
We're super ramshackle.
Oh, here we go. I haven't even read this.
Okay, you do one sentence, I'll do the next one, okay? You do the first one.
Okay. The UK Games Expo, the biggest tabletop trade show in the UK and third largest in the world, had its 2022 show last weekend over the 4th, 5th and 6th of June.
They had 20,163 unique visitors.
For a total attendance of 39,527 people.
The last pre-pandemic year the Expo went ahead was 2019, and they reported 25,704 unique with an attendance of 45,907 great unwashed people. That's not fair. Anyway.
So fewer people came along this year, and it seems that people are sticking around for less time than they usually do. What do we think, gang?
Yeah, the pandemic may be over, but will it take a while for everything to get back to normal? And also, why no COVID policy? And hotels seem really expensive for next year as well, you know.
They are extremely expensive for next year. Basically there was we reported last cast, there was an exchange between some Twitter users and Games Expo about their COVID policy, and in fact they didn't have one, and they said they would put something before the con and then didn't. I had a quick look at some of the other conventions that were using the NEC space, including one of the BBC sort of baking sort of conventions, basically the sort of big sort of good food kind of convention, and they had a COVID policy, which was effectively like, we can't really enforce anything. If you want to wear a mask, that's cool. We will absolutely support you in doing that, and it might be a good idea to take a lateral flow test before you came. That is kind of all I was expecting from UK Games Expo, and they did nada.
I think that's because, now I don't agree with what I'm about to say. Caveat, and I don't think it's the general view of the of the Giant Brain or the Brainwaves podcast, but the idea that they don't need to, right? Yeah, and that actually not having one is probably actually quite attractive to a certain demographic of people, and they're going to prefer
true.
that. You mentioned the BBC there. Frankly, you'd expect the BBC to have something like that in place because, again, like image and stuff. But why shouldn't the UK Games Expo also be portraying a similar image?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's one of those things of, are people kind of moving on from it and, like, you know, just getting over it and not having these things in place because they technically don't need to anymore.
For sure.
They legally don't need to anymore.
Yeah, but it's also a case that it makes it unenforceable as well, because technically it's like, it becomes like your policy as a business to either allow it, and then also funnily enough, you're then mixing it in with the policy of the actual event hall itself. So if that differs from, you know, you could say, well, it says out here in the actual event rules that I'm allowed to do what I want, whereas you've got your policy to say that you're stopping me from doing what I want to do, and I've paid for a ticket, and I've paid for this, and I've paid for that. So I think at the end of the day, they went, well, what can they physically do if the big giant heads at the top are saying, well, there's not any rules anybody needs to follow? I think sometimes you just put yourself in the unfortunate situation. You can say, well, if you want to, you can, you know.
I think those people who were if you put out a COVID policy and you're asking people to do stuff, I think the people who are going to follow it are the people who are going to wear masks and bring hand sanitizer and do all that stuff anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'd be interested to know, are places having at the moment, like, any con out there, whatever it might be, if they're putting something up online that says, here's our COVID policy, what's the comment section looking like? I'd kind of be interested to know. Is it just people being like, oh, I thought we've moved? Is it like the negative stuff? Or is it more, oh, thanks for this? Because, you know, I don't want to have like a doom and gloom look on the world, but I reckon it's probably going to lean more towards the people hating on the convention for having that in place. I'm not saying that's a good thing.
You say doom and gloom, I'd say sadly realistic.
Yeah, but
you will get people that are like, they'll go like, well, that's it, you've lost my money this year, and it will be like, you know, Jay Jones from Cincinnati, kind of thing, nowhere near the convention, but just has to kind of type down their absolute disgust at a situation to an event they're never going to go to, just to express how you're interfering with my human rights not to wear a mask, kind of thing. So, yeah, I think it was like, if you were going to do it anyway if you're going to wear a mask, weren't you? Let's face it.
And mentioning the States, there's a new charity bundle out, Jamie.
We've reported many times on the generosity of the tabletop community when it comes to raising money for people caught in tragic circumstances. On the 14th of May, an 18-year-old white man shot and killed 10 people at a Tops supermarket in Buffalo, New York, injuring 2 others. To support the families and friends of victims and survivors of this mass shooting, there's a bundle on itch.io raising funds for Black Love Resists in the Rust, which is a member-led abolitionist organisation of black folk and POC that believe, through leadership development, a shared politic and community organising, we will build safe and flourishing communities that resist the ills of white supremacist, heteropatriarchal capitalism, including policing. We ground our work in these 4 pillars: transformative organising, healing justice, embodied leadership, and political education. The organisation will be using the money to pay for mental health services, as well as giving help to the community at this incredibly difficult time. Now, the bundle can be bought for $5 and has just under $1,000 worth of product in it. At the time of recording, they have raised $3,744 out of a $10,000 goal. I got nothing to say on this apart from I am really sad that it's necessary.
Yeah.
That these situations have to come up for these things to be produced. But that being said, it is, I'm glad to see it is doing well.
Anyone got any comments?
All I was going to say is just urge people to go out and get it because you can get some cool stuff. Just talk about what's in the bundle, basically. Lots of tabletop RPGs, it seems like. We got a very cool thing called Sausage Bomber. This is a Steam game, but it's called Sausage Bomber, and what's not to love?
Sausage Bomber just sounds fantastic. I mean,
exactly.
Who does not want?
I'd suggest everybody click the link in the show notes and when this is live.
Especially if you're an RPG fan, there's a lot of RPGs in that bundle. Some cool stuff to check out.
Even if you're not an RPGer, it's like $5, which is literally like about £4. It's probably $5, which is literally about £5 at the moment, based on our exchange rate. But yeah, it's an absolutely fantastic.
£4 and 6 pence, according to Google.
Wow!
There you go.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
Can I also just a couple more things that caught my interest when I was looking at this a while ago, which was a thing called Dark Space, and it's an immersive virtual murder mystery for 5 friends in the dark of space.
Cool.
And
that sounds good.
Yeah, and The Mysteries of Addie C, which is a solo game where you play as a paranormal investigator staying 13 nights at a haunted bed and breakfast.
Ooh. House of Nuts, a multi-generational story about squirrels surviving in a kingdom of suburbia.
Yes.
That sounds amazing. That sounds amazing.
Anyway, Jamie, let's move on.
Nuts in the dark. Kind of like Blades in the Dark, but with squirrels.
I want to play that now.
Better move on.
Ian, there is news from Funforge.
Funforge are the publishers of Tokaido, amongst many other games, and in recent years have had some troubles delivering games through Kickstarter. Now it seems they are to give the crowdfunding platform a wide berth, as they've announced their intention to move all products back to distribution and direct to retail in order to help with cash flow problems. They have said they are pausing progress in all current Kickstarters, the most recent of which were Namiji, the follow-up to Tokaido, and the Monumental reprint. Namiji is currently going out to backers, but Monumental was still in production. They say in the statement that unforeseen increases in the cost of production is the main reason for this move. Now, we all know that production and shipping are becoming major issues for board game publishers across the spectrum. I don't personally fully understand why going straight to retail is going to help them improve that situation. Crowdfunding gets you money up front, allows you to do the production, and yes, of course, if you haven't factored in some increase in shipping costs, a lot of people are struggling with that side. But going straight to retail means you're having to wait for a lot of money to come in, and you're still having to distribute those games somehow. You're still having to ship them. So I don't quite understand how this is going to solve their problem.
No, just to say that you mentioned Lovely Walk Simulator Tokaido. Again, a game I absolutely love, and I think I gave to Sam. They did also publish a bunch of other games, such as Brass Birmingham, Brass Lancashire, Caverna Agricola, Baron Park,
okay,
Quantum.
I'm kind of surprised that they haven't kind of, with that kind of back catalogue, that they haven't approached the kind of the retail angle more robustly. I guess from my point of view, there's a lot of people kind of having that pain. I think a Kickstarter update from a company recently that said literally we need $250,000 in order to be able to even consider shipping this to you. I think it was I can't remember. I think it wasn't Etherfields or something like that, but it was certainly one of the bigger projects that has come out, and they just basically say we're $250,000 down in shipping, so we need help with that. But it seems like I feel
like we covered that.
Yeah, it has been horrendous. It has been horrendous for publishers, but I'm not sure that coming off Kickstarter is the answer to those problems. But anyway, we'll see what happens. I was quite looking forward to Tokaido Duel, the 2-player one. I was quite wanting to get a chance to play that, but yeah. Gavin in our lecture there chat says the 2-player Tokaido was at UK Games Expo and it looked like a beaut.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Is it okay? So are we heading towards a kind of a GMT P500 type model then? Where basically what's going to
I'd imagine some might go to that, yeah.
For people who don't know the 500, they will put games, GMT, company from things like Twilight Struggle, 1960, The Making of a President, to name but few. They have a crowdfunding of sorts on their website whereby they'll put up ideas for games, and if it gets 500 backers, they'll put it into production. I've got that right, yeah?
I said that without even moving my lips. How'd you like that?
Anyway, let's get this. Anyway, I'm going to move the show on a little bit because we need to get the actual show bit over so that Richard can come and probe our minds for questions.
No, I see this. You see, this is my plan from overall. Can I spend so long talking about the news that it's like one question.
We'd like to take a moment to give a little shout out to our patrons, especially James Nail and Sean Newman, our executive producers. We'll get linked to all of James and Sean's bits and pieces in the show notes. You can support us on Patreon and through various bits and pieces that we're involved with. You can get dice from Metallic Dice Games, t-shirts from Sir Meeple, and we'll link to all our other little bits and pieces in the show notes. And I'm actually going to get to do an outro bit this week. Yay!
This year, yes.
This year. Yeah, probably this year, let's face it. You mostly do the outro.
I mostly do the outro because, now Sam's here. We can say, we started the Monopoly news on the Meeple People podcast that Sam and I did ages ago.
Yeah.
And it just ran. And you, like the poor sap you are, let us continue it.
I keep meaning to get sponsorship for that. We must be one of the only board game podcasts that talk regularly about Monopoly. For sure.
It's worth it. You get great news from it.
It is. Thank you. It is amazing news.
Some of it's brilliant. Yeah, absolutely fantastic.
It's all right.
Right,
yeah.
Ian, on you go.
Okay, this was originally posted on the 1st of April, but apparently real things do actually happen on that day. It was submitted in June 2021 and accepted in February of this year. So that leads a little bit more authority to what I'm about to say. Box farts. They're a serious condition affecting a majority of boxes. On the website of the American Physical Society, a paper was published by...
Ian. We're going to have to take... What is a box fart?
You know when you push a box lid down onto the base of a box, it air lets out and the box farts.
Can we get a live one on the podcast? One moment.
Hold on. Yes.
Jamie's going for it.
I have a copy of Lawyer Up by Rock.
It needs to be a big game usually.
It needs to be
it's not big. I don't have any big games next. Hold on. Only fans. Thank you, Gavin. Okay. I'm holding my box next to the mic.
People pay for box farts on OnlyFans.
I don't know if you heard that. It was
Can't hear. I think Discord might have muted it.
That was a silent but deadly one.
Anyway,
I've got one. I've got the perfect game. I've got it. It's working. It's happening. This is Quadropolis. I'm going to turn my gain up on my microphone.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay, here we go.
Top quality content here, folks.
Here we
Here we
go.
go.
Ooh. Good ball.
Oh, we just keep going. There we go.
That was amazing.
Quality reporting. Thank you very much.
You turn your game.
On the website of the American Physical Society, a paper was published by a bunch of people I'm going to attempt to pronounce. Charlotte de Ritter, Emile Visby Ostergaard, Sean Marker, and Kara H. Jensen, entitled Fluid Physics of Telescoping Cardboard Boxes.
Box farts to you and me.
Why should we care? Well, it depends on what field you work or are interested in, but it specifically mentions board game boxes and suggests an optimal design for a rapidly closing box. We'll link to the paper in the show notes. Synopsis of the paper, Fooling Around with Boxes by Catherine Wright, Deputy Editor of Physics. In the summer of 2018, Carl Jensen was tidying up some lidded boxes in his lab at the Technical University of Denmark when he noticed something odd. The lids of the boxes all took different lengths of time to fall into place. He investigated the literature to see if anyone knew why, but he couldn't identify any studies that explored this topic. Jensen and his colleagues decided to rectify that and started collecting more lidded boxes to study, including one for an iPad and another for the game Settlers of Catan. Later, they also 3D printed the lids and bases of boxes with specific designs. They also uncovered the optimal base and lid shapes for making the lids close as quickly and smoothly as possible. The optimum lid is perfectly square, while the sides of the base taper such they are closer together at the base's top than at its bottom.
Science, folks. Board games, science.
Doing
Bringing you
God's
the
work.
best in tabletop gaming.
Science, boy.
Anyway, Jamie, your turn.
Okay, moving away from box farts to a heartwarming story from Western Australia now. In the town of Bunbury, Western Australia, Holly and Simon have got engaged through a card game. According to the Bunbury Mail, Muffin Time requires players to have 10 cards exactly to win, but cards may be gained or lost through actions on some cards. Included in the deck are blank cards, where Simon wrote his marriage proposal. Now, during the game, Holly had to steal one of his cards. Guess which card she ended up stealing? At which point, Simon produced the ring. Now, this apparently happened on New Year's Day, so I hope they're still very happily together. Congratulations. I know it's 6 months down the line, but nice.
Jamie, all this
I'll give
niceness
it a year.
and celebration I don't care about. Give me the Monopoly news. That's what you're
Can I make a request?
Yes, sir.
What?
Can I take Monopoly News episode 100?
Yes, you can,
Absolutely.
sir.
I would love to. So around 5 years ago, as Jamie said in the little preamble, I don't know if it's going to make the cut, but Jamie and I hosted a podcast called the Meeple People Podcast. And yeah, we had this thing about running Monopoly News, and it's made its way into Brainwaves, and it's carried on, and I'm very happy to see some here. But yeah, about 5 years ago, in around 2017, Hasbro ran a contest to bring a new counter into Monopoly. You could vote on a penguin, a rubber duck, a T-Rex, and the winner, surprise, surprise, was a T-Rex.
No, it was.
Wait, what? It was all of them. I'm reading it wrong. Sorry, one moment.
It's fine. No, it's fine because I actually had to listen to the podcast again, which was weird. There were 50 choices, and the 3 that won were penguin, rubber duck, and T-Rex.
There you go. The boot, the
natural
wheelbarrow, and the boot, the wheelbarrow, and the thimble were all kicked out of the box. But essentially, people don't know what's good for them. They don't know what they want, and they're doing another vote. They're doing more things, and the thimble is back. The T-Rex is gone. Get out, bringing the thimble back. Classic Monopoly. Yeah, boy.
No, I will say it's 5 years later, and I'm still annoyed that that my vote for sliced bread as one of the counters was completely rejected.
I think people like the thimble. You can wear the thimble. It's tactile. That's the word. T-Rex ain't tactile. What are you going to do with that?
But why
can
get rid
wear
of
the
the T-Rex
thimble.
when the Jurassic films are coming back to our cinemas? You've got a bit of a tie in there. Why get rid of the T-Rex at that juncture?
Why get rid of the T-Rex when you can get rid of the cat?
Do you think that the T-Rex sculpt is going to be used in Jurassic World Dominion Monopoly?
And also, from a practical point of view, T-Rex are very, very difficult at rolling dice. With those tiny hands, they find it almost impossible to pick up the dice after they've rolled them. So it's not just a kind of we don't want the T-Rex, it's the fact that you could be playing as the T-Rex and it could expand the game on the Monopoly for another 3 hours, is you have to try and pick up the dice while being a T-Rex, which means, it's just physically impossible. So that's why they got rid of it. It was a practical reason. I rest my case.
I see.
Well,
I like those comments of Campbell saying he can't play Monopoly without wearing the little hat.
See what I mean? People practically
Campbell got a
use it.
very tiny head.
Well,
like
maybe he
very
just has.
tiny head.
It's part of the game. He has to balance the hat on his head, and if he drops the
He's using a
hat off his
dexterity element.
head,
That's what you're saying.
he almost has to give away like £1 every time he drops his hat off of his head. That is pretty much how it would. That is pretty much how it would work.
what is Monopoly if it's nothing but fresh, keeps reinventing itself?
True.
It's
Wonderful.
It's the Madonna of the board game world.
It is.
As
It's always going to be there.
As long as it doesn't do a topless kind of Monopoly, which is what we don't want, because otherwise you wouldn't want kind of like the board pieces kind of going every...
They've done it. There was sexy Monopoly, wasn't there? That happened. That was a thing. Came with some handcuffs.
It's like
Yep.
sexy
Well,
Monopoly.
that wasn't
I don't
sexy.
know.
That was Cheater's Monopoly.
Yeah.
There was a sexy one though, right? There was like an adults only.
Listen, there is almost certainly.
Gavin,
Probably.
I have seen Madonna recently, and let's face it, I wish I'd closed back the lid of the box. It's 100 episodes.
Okay.
On that bombshell.
This joint is mine, as he would say.
Yeah.
As he would say.
We'll let Richard take over.
I remember a long time ago, a couple of years ago, a young man by the name of Ian McAllister, and we had ended up kind of talking back and forward, started a conversation which was, look, I want to run something past you. We were thinking about producing a kind of a topical news show, put a bit of comedy in there, and see how we run with it. And, you know, I was one of the people that was privileged to kind of hear the mock together episode. I'm really glad that they went ahead and dropped the comedy bit and stuck with the
episode that no one will ever hear.
Stuck with the serious stuff. It's now been 100 episodes. People have come and gone. But back in the fold, we have the absolutely wonderful Sam. And it's almost like you can't say Sam without saying it in the Lord of the Rings kind of Sam, because he's here, he's back, he's dependable, he's lovely, he's gorgeous. How are you, Sam? Because I'm going to ask you some questions.
I will
How are you doing?
carry you.
How are you?
I'm good.
Are you doing well? Yeah.
I'm doing well.
It's a quick
I've
question.
got a window open. There's a slight breeze. It's lovely.
Good. Have you managed to sit down with Jamie and Ian and work through the issues that caused you to leave the podcast in the first place?
They were interdimensional issues. We physically couldn't sit in the same reality to even do that. I don't even know how this is happening right now. I went through a wormhole. I think I maybe came back once after going through the wormhole hole, but it's a mess of time and space.
Are you in speaking terms now? Are you happy to talk to each other now? I mean, is this going to be a one-off?
Occasionally,
What's going to happen?
Like today, I hear voices. I answer them. I'm happy to do so.
Sam may or may not be absolutely physically present within the Giant Brain HQ, depending on how you determine your physical reality. I don't want to exclude people with potentially multiple eyes or who can see into different dimensions.
Is it like a quantum leap type thing, where he's actually transported himself into another body and is there playing the role of Sam?
I think it's more like Interstellar. I'm Matthew McConaughey in the walls of Brainwaves HQ, and I am influencing dice throws.
I think
That's why it's been going wrong for me so much recently.
With
right?
gravitational waves, yeah.
I think that's kind of wonderful and kind of beautiful.
You mentioned being in the walls, and unfortunately, I put on Encanto at work today for children, so now I've just got you slinking through, just going, "We don't talk about Sam." No.
That's me.
That's you.
I'm the guy in the walls.
You're John Leguizamo.
Sure. I'm John Leguizamo. I'm Matthew McConaughey. I'm whoever you want me to be.
Pee Wee Herman.
Yes.
Ooh, I don't know.
As long as he's in the walls, that's me.
As long as he's in the walls, that would be me. Oh, look. Oh, we've got a question. Gavin has obviously been chomping at the bit to ask this. And he says, if you could have one special guest newsreader, who would it be? And why would it be Sir Trevor McDonald?
It's not. It's Moira Stewart every day. Moira Stewart.
Sam's bringing Moira Stewart. Ian, if you could have one special guest newsreader, who would it be? And why would it be Sir Trevor McDonald?
Well, it definitely wouldn't be Sir Trevor McDonald. We did have guests for a little point. There was a period where we had guest news presenters, and that was a thing we did for a while.
It was,
and that was a cool period. That was a cool period of the cast. It got a little unwieldy, and it didn't always work depending on who the guest was. But it was pretty cool.
I'm in the room. I'm right here. Okay, but if you could have anyone at all,
anyone at all. Matt from Shop and Sit Down would be an interesting newsreader. I think he's got some really interesting opinions about the sort of the board game industry in general, and it'd be interesting to have him on, and sort of chat about interesting, sort of his view on current news stories.
Send the email, Ian.
It's close.
Get the ball
not what
rolling.
I've got on the card. What about you, Jamie?
Okay. Do they have to be alive right now?
Why have you killed them?
No.
He's going for Gandhi. Jamie always goes for Gandhi. It's always Gandhi with Jamie.
It's literally the
Gandhi
line
all the way
underneath
down with
me.
Jamie.
I've literally just stabbed him 52 times.
So Trevor McDonald is good. I'm gonna go.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go for someone else with an equally as iconic voice, and I'm gonna go for the late great Orson Welles.
Oh, really? Okay.
I think the man's timbre would be very interesting, and I think his almost legendary disdain would add quite a
brilliant.
add quite a frisson to the.
Also had a very famous Advanced Dungeons and Dragons campaign running just before he died. So
did he?
Oh.
Sure, I don't know.
That's just,
Let's find out if the Orson Welles estate sues us after this cast.
It's just interesting to see kind of
always.
Jamie get thoroughly kind of reeled in by that. Oh, really? Did he?
I know.
wonder what character. You can imagine it just an Orson Welles kind of Dungeons, and just like, you go into the room, you're rubbish. You know, because that, if you read any of the kind of the transcripts of him chatting about any actor or director he was working with, he thought everybody was absolutely terrible.
Yes.
Campbell.
All I'll say is last word on Orson Welles, which is if you haven't listened to it, go listen to his Frozen Peas recording. Oh, Craig in the chat, thank you, Craig, has suggested not Tom Waits, Jamie, and I go, oh, that's a very good point.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Tom Waits would be amazing.
I mean, he is basically incomprehensible now, but
How dare you?
it's true.
Plus, I come up with the most amazing facts.
I think there is definitely something in having someone along who just doesn't care at all. Like, bring Bob Dylan in and have him talk about board games. And just see
there'd be an
see where it
perspective
runs.
there, right? Yeah.
Like, what? It'd be wonderful.
Is this where you roll a dice? Is this what you yeah. Anyway, Campbell, this is my part of the show, so back off, everybody. Campbell says, oh, okay, I'm doing this too. I don't know if this is your accent, Campbell. It could be this. Oh, okay, I'm doing this too. If you can bring back one big person in history to play a board game with you, who are you inviting to play, and what game are you asking them to play? And I'm going to bring that straight into the lap of Jamie.
Oh, that's fair enough, because I answered it last time.
You did.
I don't know. Now, my first thought is to get some kind of military leader and play a war game with them. But I'm going to go with the first thing off the top of my head, and that is I'd like to see how noted hair haver Karl Marx would do with games like Brass.
Oh, that'd be interesting.
When you called him noted hair haver, I really hoped you were going down like the Guess Who route.
Yeah.
As a guess, I could flip everybody. Is it this? Is it that? Mustache?
If it could be one person. Okay, it's Karl Marx. If it was two, I'd go Marx and Engels. If it was three people, Marx, Engels, and Adam Smith, and get them all playing Brass together and see how that would work.
I was gonna say get Hitler playing Secret Hitler, but
no, nah.
wrong.
Do you know why?
Why?
Do you know why? I don't think he'd be very enjoyable to play it with. I'll be honest.
Probably no. I know. It wasn't meant to be, serious. But
no, I know.
Okay,
I know.
Sam, if you could, I'll do a different voice.
Hello.
Hello, Sam. If you can get one big person in history to play a board game with you, who are you inviting to play, and what game are you asking them to play?
First, like the fun ones that come to mind is like, let's play Cluedo with Agatha Christie. Let's play Mysterium with someone like Conan Doyle. Hey, let's play Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective with Conan Doyle.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
How good is he at his own thing?
Yeah, but he's going to get really annoyed, and he's going to be like, but nobody talks about fairies.
But ultimately, I think...
Beautiful
And
accent
then-
there, Jamie.
Thank you. I live in Edinburgh,
So they're not even dead, but I think I'd like to play some nice, low-level games. I'm talking, I don't know, just something like play something real nice and simple. nice and chill. You can have a nice conversation with Paul McCartney. I think that'll be a fun afternoon. I think he's the kind of guy who wants to sit around and just chat and just, yeah.
Is this before or after he died in the mid-60s?
Oh, yeah, it is a person from history. I will go with Paul McCartney number 2.
Okay, cool.
Paul McCartney.
I think we're on number 4 or 5 at the moment.
Yeah.
And finally, the same question to Ian. If you could play with one big person in history to play a board game with, who are you inviting to play? And what game are you asking them to play?
Okay, so he's not a big person in history, but one of my favourite authors was Ian Banks, and died way too young. And I think it'd be really interesting to sit down and play a couple of 2-player games with some sci-fi themes, preferably because of the culture novels, and just chat to him about his creative process and like how he write books. And yeah, he wrote a couple of books that have games in them. He wrote Player of Games, which was quite game focused, and he wrote a book I haven't actually read. I've got, but I never actually got around to reading it, called The Steep Approach to Carbondale, which is about a board game dynasty family. A family that makes this board game and it becomes incredibly popular, and they've got all this money from.
I have read that.
Yeah, I haven't read that. And that's
or have I?
So,
I had it on my shelf at one point. I can't remember if I read it or not.
I've got it lying around somewhere. But yeah, I'd really like to sit down with Ian Banks and play some 2-player games and chat about his creative process, because he's a fantastic writer, and I went to see him speak a couple of times, and he was just a lovely man.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that. Gavin Jones. He's looking very happy, Gavin, doesn't he? He's a very smiley person in the Discord, and he's a lovely, genuinely seems to be a lovely guy that you would probably, if he was one big person in history, I'd like to play a game with Gavin Jones, I'll be honest. What's Jamie's favourite Monopoly? And you have to choose. There can be only one. So
I like thinking of the phrasing of this question. I like it, me and Ian have to choose what Jamie's favourite Monopoly is.
Yeah, I know.
That's what the question's asking. You have to choose. What's Jamie's favourite Monopoly? You have to choose.
What is Jamie's favourite Monopoly? What is Jamie's favourite Monopoly, Sam?
Monopoly, Sam.
I think going down like theme and stuff like that. Jamie's into I don't even know if Star Trek Monopoly exists, but I think he'd like something like that.
Sure.
It has to exist, but who knows?
Yeah, absolutely.
But then also I know that Jamie does like, a change of the rules. So any of those versions of Monopoly that actually change things up a slight bit, Cheetah's Monopoly, I've never played it, but I think Jamie would probably give it a go. Because it's not your classic run-of-the-mill Monopoly. Yeah.
That's a good.
Am I close, Jamie? Am I in the right ballpark there?
Let's Ian answer the question next, which is, what is Jamie's favourite?
Covered so many versions of Monopoly.
Yes, we have.
So many versions.
And I remember quite a few of them, sadly.
Most of them go out of my head almost instantly, I have to say. I love covering them, but it's not knowledge I retain. So what's your favourite Monopoly?
I've got another one as well. I can add another one.
I'm going to go with Sam's suggestion. I think those are good suggestions. Jamie will definitely give new games a try, because he's like, personally, he'll give a new game a try no matter what.
I think Jamie would also just like a good old-fashioned Glasgow Monopoly. Definitely exists. It's out there. There's one for every place.
Gavin's putting a couple of comments here. One of them, he says, Her Majesty the Queen Elizabeth II Monopoly, which she owns everything anyway, so that's how that game starts.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's a very short game.
And the second one is for when you're
play it.
When you're quite sad, and if you've got a long face, you've got the Horse Lovers Monopoly. Or good to see one person in the audience got that one. He's asking Monopoly art. Okay, so out of His Majesty the Queen Elizabeth of Monopoly, Monopoly Horse Lovers Edition, and Monopoly Artichoke, which is the fake one?
Monopoly Horse Lovers Edition.
There you go. Is that your favourite?
I'm going to go for Monopoly Artichoke. Is definitely the fake one.
I think Artichoke. I know that the Queen one is real because I'm looking at it right now. I'm trying to zoom in on the board. I want to know what the spaces are.
I will say this: there is a website called World of Monopoly where I don't know who it is, but they are absolutely wonderful, and they put up like so many sets of Monopoly and where you can get them.
You can just click on you've got it on your bookmarks tab. You've got it in your bookmarks, and you just click on it. You have to.
You know what? I don't, but I just remember it. I will say my favourite version of Monopoly. Now, this might be slightly cheating. because it is Monopoly Deal, which is the card game version.
Yep.
I knew it'd be different. I was right.
Yep, you are absolutely right, and there's something different, but it is not the traditional board version. It is Monopoly Deal. If I was able to put inverted commas around the favorite Monopoly, it would be, as in my least favorite, I think it would be the Monopoly Socialism Edition, because it was dripping with. It wasn't even sarcasm or even sardonic tone. It was just
terrible,
just mean, and it just seemed really horrible, even by. Some of the versions I've not been a big fan of.
It's just, yeah. I mean, my favourite one is the Mario one.
Mario one is great from what I've heard.
That's the one with the powers and everything, isn't it?
Yep. Again, changes the rules.
There you go.
Mine, purely because it's what I grew up playing, was the Phantom Menace Monopoly. It had metal credits as money, which was very nice.
Ooh,
I mean,
nice.
my favourite Monopoly is Lords of Vegas.
Yeah. I think that's the best answer so far.
That is no.
Played it relatively recently, and I ran away with it. Made
It's
fat
so good.
stacks. It was good.
I've got another question here from Campbell. Which would you rather? You can play your favourite game every day, but it's the only game you ever get to play to the exclusion of all others, or you get to play a board game every day out of every board game in the world, but you'll get to play that given game only once for the rest of your life, and then all the copies of it worldwide get thrown into a big fire and you can never play it again.
I don't understand the question.
Basically play one game forever, or play like lots of games only once
Play
ever.
every game only once ever. It's like
I will.
As long as I get to choose the worst games that I don't like first, then they can go in a big fire and I'll be happy.
No,
I think
see,
the
I'm
games
gonna
just
go
turn
for the
up.
second.
I think the games just turn up and you don't get a choice. I think the games
Okay.
just turn up on
I mean,
your
as
doorstep and you don't get a
a
choice.
critic, in air quotes, I'd definitely go for the latter, because that would give me a bit more breadth of interest. So yeah, the latter for me.
I'd go for the latter as well. I think it'd be really interesting and kind of amazing just to be like, it's really sad that I won't be able to play this game again. Like, I'll never have the experience of playing. I'm looking at my shelves. I don't have Twilight Struggle, and I'll never play it again. If I played it wrong, tough. But then again, maybe that's the nature of art, and art by its very nature is ephemeral.
I'm going to go with number 2 as well, because of the wording of it. This is what I love. So I get to play any given game only once, and then all copies of it worldwide get thrown in a big fire. Yeah?
Yeah.
So a game can be doing really well. Everyone's loving it. What's the new hot thing at the moment?
Arc Nova.
Cool. Everyone's talking about Arc Nova. Everyone's buying it. Everyone's playing it. And then I'm just like, one day I'm going to play it. And then you're never going to play it again.
You could ransom people.
Exactly.
Play your game. Hi, this is Sam Mag's ransom channel. I might play your
Oh
game,
my
and then I'll
goodness, it's
disappear
like
in a ball of fire.
And then
like
all copies of it worldwide get big.
Embracer board. It's like listening to the Embracer boardroom at the moment. Oh, how can we make money out of this? You horrible, horrible people.
Trust these ones to hijack it. I was going for something pure and lovely.
No, I want the power.
I have a question, because I am obviously a person that interviews stuff. A lot of the new stuff that you see in other places, I'm not going to name any names. There's some people that do kind of like quite other stuff, but a lot of stuff seems to be kind of like, here's news and it's a press release and it's just marketing. How important was it when you were deciding the kind of the format of the podcast that you were going to be bringing in the more controversial stuff? And are you glad that you've continued to bring in these kind of talking points as the podcast has gone on?
Ian, am I okay to jump in this very quickly?
Yeah, go for it. Shoot.
Cool.
Shoot.
I don't know if we actually properly discussed it until we were a wee bit further down the line. Of just going, we're not really doing any press releases, and I think that was important because at that point, what is it? But it's a glorified ad for that, and going, oh, this game is coming out, and you can look at any board game websites, there are screeds of them, and going, this game has been announced, this game has been announced. Now, to be fair, we do press releases when it's things like Monopoly, or I think, as I've said before, there are.
That's so good. Now we don't do press releases because that's a big ad. However, we'll talk about Monopoly. Come on, we'll take all the Monopoly bucks in the world.
The literal embodiment of capitalism.
The literal embodiment of capitalism. Yeah, of course, I contradict myself all the time. We do Monopoly.
No, now and again we do new press releases, for sure.
We do new press releases, but it's mainly for stuff that I think we said before is stuff that is interesting, but not just for the product itself. Like I think recently we talked about the Monuments Men playing cards, which was playing cards with art that was still lost from after the Second World War or hidden by the Nazis. I think that's quite interesting because it's talking about another. It's something that's more important than just it's a pack of playing cards. Or there was a game I think last year that was on Kickstarter and it was about preserving the Mongolian language because the Mongolian language was in danger of being eradicated.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. I think that's important to raise those kind of issues because it is not just here is a game. It is here is a game that is also maybe a learning tool or something like that.
Yeah, I have a distinct memory of the early casts. We were a little bit lighter, and there was some more skit stuff and that kind of thing. When Sam was still part of the cast, we did some more of that kind of stuff, and that was good fun. And then I have a distinct memory of us all, the three of us having a discussion about. I can't remember what it was. I'd have to go back and look at early cast. Yeah. But there was a thing happened in the tabletop industry, and we sort of bit the bullet and decided to talk about it. And it was a controversial thing. And from that point on,
I remember that.
We dived more into that side of things because we weren't initially sure how to handle it because we were still quite young as a cast and. Let's face it, none of us really knew what we were doing. We were kind of making up as we go along.
Was that not in relation potentially to people not doing their own homework? If I remember,
I honestly don't remember. It was quite an early cast. I think it was like in the late single or early double digits.
All right,
there was something that like was a controversy, and we hadn't really picked up on anything before then that was like really controversial, but there was a thing that happened. I honestly don't remember what it was, but I have a distinct memory of us talking.
I remember us talking about topics.
How do we cover this? How do we?
I remember us talking about like, wasn't there like certain like abuse stuff at conventions and things like that?
Yeah, it was something like that. Yeah, it was something pretty nasty.
But yeah, I think it's also those things that clearly need to be spoken about. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the whole point about speaking about it is like, well, yeah, you can go away and find a million casts about, talking about the new edition of 40k that's just dropped, but it's like, it's not the most interesting thing, right? And I remember having those conversations. Like, if it's just another thing where, you can go to the front page of whatever it might be and read out all of those headlines of just here's the cool stuff that's being released in shops this week. It's like, well, that's just what everyone else is doing, right?
In that case, do you feel that you've maintained your integrity as a podcast? Because I don't think it's not a case of it's like, oh, what are you leaning on? Well, I'm leaning on this rather big copy of Arc Nova that I've got on my side. Oh, that looks fun. Well, it is. Let me tell you why it's fun, kind of thing. So do you feel kind of almost like, well, we're glad we kind of maintained our integrity because you don't seem to be beholden to anybody, but also at the same time, does that put you in a difficult situation if, say, somebody approached to sponsor the podcast? Then would you? I think
Ian's person to talk to about sponsorship, definitely. But I think the way I've kind of approached it, I think I've said this to Ian, I may have said this to Sam, I can't remember when we were talking about it, but we are in a rapidly burgeoning, and has been for maybe 25 years or so, industry that's huge now. There are so many podcasts when you can talk about these are the games I've been playing and why we like these games, and that's fine. I've got no problem with them. They are fantastic. They do their own thing. Podcasting, very easy. Good podcasting, very hard. I'm not saying we're good podcasters. We're doing okay, but we don't. I'm not. I don't want to sit here. I think it would be disingenuous to say, sit in a podcast and go, oh yeah, the board game community, oh, we're so wonderful, we're so open and inclusive and welcoming. As you hear that a lot of people say that, which in many ways is true, but also it's a massive lie. We talked about what some of that, on the record tonight. There's a lot of way to go, and I don't think that it's going to get better by not talking about it.
No,
And
like
I think we have to bring these things to light, as ugly as they may be, as, people who, reputations, maybe that we don't have a good reputation because we do just, keep going, we'll talk about this stuff. Part of me really doesn't care because it needs to get talked about.
Do you think that's why when something kind of hits, like this most recent thing that we were discussing tonight, it's almost like you get the feeling like everybody sharpens their pitchforks and goes out, because genuinely, unless something's being highlighted, there are people that do champion the inclusivity, but I sometimes get the feeling that some people are quite, they just get on with it. I'm creating my next bit of content. I'm writing my next review. I'm playing my next game. And then when people say, "Oh, look, this person's been, a terrible person," it's like, "All right, well, let's light up the torches and go up to the castle," kind of thing.
It's a really hard one, because I definitely think things like Twitter amplify the emotions, because you're seeing all this stuff over and over and over again, and of course it gets you angry. I mean, I read a lot. One of the things we do on the cast is read a lot of the stuff so you don't have to. Because there's some stuff in the stories we've covered in the past, and there's one a couple of casts ago where we were covering, I can't remember the gentleman's name, but basically a guy who was incredibly anti-Semitic and racist, and I went and looked at some of his tweets and encouraged everyone not to, because I had. But basically that's one of the things we do, is we read into this stuff and look it up and actually read about it, so we can present it and summarize it for you, so you don't have to go and look for these things. And it's very easy. I think it's very easy for Twitter to seem black, Twitter's the main one, let's face it, for this kind of stuff, for everything to seem black and white. And there are definitely grey areas, but at the same time there are things that absolutely need called out. And I think one of the advantages we have as a cast is I've always been extremely aware that we are, well, for a while, 3 white cis het men, and now 2 white cis het men recovering the news. And that there's a bit of privilege with that, of course, because of the way our society's set up. But it also means that we have a bit of protection from calling this stuff out. We can
if
say,
somebody comes after you, then there's less likely.
Yeah, exactly. It's less likely. Like if we were women or people of color covering this stuff, I would imagine the backlash to us covering this stuff would be much, much worse. And that's awful. But it's good that we can stand and say these things and try and be allies and try and point out the horrible things that are going on in the world, in our particular hobby. And it does, upset's the wrong word, but it irritates me slightly that larger places for instance Lice Tower News, that kind of thing, they occasionally cover some of the stuff we cover, but it's mostly press releases for most of the big news sites. It's just all press releases and everything is awesome and Aren't Board Games wonderful. And I wrote a piece about this recently, about the nature of content creation. If you just want to be in promotion, that's fantastic and great. And we need those people. But we also need the criticism side as well.
Yeah.
If we're going to grow as a hobby, if we're going to actually be more inclusive and not just say it.
Yeah. You
need someone going, "Oh, this guy's this behavior's not good," or "That's not great," or you need people pointing that stuff out. And when we first set up the cast, the cast that will never be heard, I'm not even sure I've got that original cast. For those that don't know, we put out to our friends and family basically before we ever did Brainwaves. Jamie, Sam, and I put together a single cast for the kind of thing that Brainwaves might look like. A sort of
I'll likely have it somewhere.
Yeah. Sam's maybe got some. I maybe got a copy somewhere. And basically, the original idea behind the cast was to do a more sort of day-to-day, sort of satirical news show.
The MASH report,
that kind of thing.
Yeah,
right.
I just realised you've been I know we've done a bunch of interviews together, and you've said the day-to-day, and I'm like, I get that, but I realised
MASH report is actually a better comparison. Yeah, you're right. But yeah, that sort of thing, right? Or the Bugle, or those kind of satirical news shows. And we gave that a shot.
To say it went badly.
The feedback was basically, it was we didn't sound like ourselves. And it didn't sound like, our personalities didn't come through because we were trying so hard to do the other thing, to do the satirical side of that.
Because it turns out comedy is hard.
Yeah, it's hard. Who knew?
And that's why we started doing those little sketches as well, wasn't it? Because it was like, let's stray away from that. Let's keep it. Let's do like the serious news stuff, but also if there's like a little weird world we can then dive into and do some. And it was basically just like a realistic look on what a board game is and like just extrapolating that out, wasn't it? So like we did Fog of Love and we did like Deep Sea Adventure where we're all going down and we're
good, yeah. I remember that
on
one.
a submarine and stuff. And
there was one I recorded outside. We did a skit for 5 Minute Chase.
Yes.
I recorded part of it outside actually running with my wife.
Which I don't know if that photo is still there, but if you look on the Giant Brain website and there's a photo of all of us, Ian, the picture of Ian is the photo that he took while he was recording this. Not while, but just like
absolutely amazing. Great. It's the best photo. It's the first photo I ever thought I saw of Ian, and I went, "Oh, somebody's been exercising."
And if you look at, and if you look on the site, Jamie's got this, lovely headshot.
Yeah,
and Sam has this album coming this year kind of headshot.
That's from like 10 years ago.
Yeah, mine was from 5 years ago.
4. Ian Chandler's photo is a little bit more iPhone fuzzy, but even Peter Hopkins, who's written for us a couple of times, his photo looks all like sort of black and white, and like here's the author book jacket kind of photo, and I'm just like a sweaty guy with some branches coming out of my head.
Brilliant. So I'm conscious of the time, so I'm going to go to one last question.
Yeah, we should probably wrap things up.
From Gavin the Body Jones. Any stories you're especially proud of the way that you handled them?
Can I start purely because I've been around for the least amount of time, I suppose?
Yeah, of course you can. Yeah.
So the one that comes back to me, and again, it's going back to like the integrity question and stuff, and I get that this is like this question's been asked as like a follow up, but I'm sure Iain and Jamie remember us talking about like the Dized app.
Yeah.
Yes.
And again, just going back to that idea of being able to say things because we're not beholden to any sponsorship or anything like that. We don't have to have this isn't everything wonderful kind of take. There was this app that was on Kickstarter and it wasn't on Kickstarter, and it kind of, the idea of it was it's going to teach you how to play a bunch of board games. And we had a serious dive into it. Ian, you learned how to play King Domino through the app to really kind of give it a test run. And overall it was good. And we had good things to kind of say about it. And we were like, yeah, this could go somewhere. And we interviewed some people from the company, and there was some weird stuff around it as well, because they went up on Kickstarter and it was like Indiegogo. They had a load of money from it.
And then they went to Indiegogo for extra funding, and it was all a bit odd.
And I think the way we kind of went about the whole thing was just we're just going to give our take on it. And our take will sometimes be really good on it. Our take will sometimes be, what the hell's going on here? Yeah. But I suppose it was just good fun to be able to have all of those opinions and put them all out whilst actually, using it and enjoying some of it, but then having direct interviews with people who are making the app as well. But then after the interviews kind of coming away and saying, well, we're still not entirely sure about it. We don't know, but we'll keep you updated. And no glossing over anything really. It was here's our honest take. We don't know. And we're also saying this in an interview with the guy who's making it.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
What about you, Ian? Is it the same, the dice thing, or would there? I mean, there must have been hundreds of stories.
Yeah, we did handle that well, and look, we've had 100 casts, and we've covered a lot of let's face it, we've covered a lot of pretty horrible stuff within the industry.
Yep.
We've covered a lot of abuse cases, and we've reached out to individuals and talked to them about whether it's okay to use their stories and that kind of thing. Even though the stuff's on Twitter, when we can and when I have the time, because I do reach out to people who are reporting abuse and that kind of thing to say, look, we'd like to talk about this in our cast. Is that okay? We do our best to be as honest as we can. We do our best to one of the things that the relationship Jamie and I have especially is Jamie keeps me in check when I want to go off on one a bit more, and keeps me in line, which is great. I love him for that. Keeps me sort of centered, as opposed to otherwise this cast would just be ranting at people a lot. It would be, but I think we're quite measured in the way the format we have now is we're quite measured in the way we present articles like the the Jamison and Satine one we covered in this particular cast. And then we get a little bit of a chance to go off on one a little bit and discuss what our own thoughts are on it. And I really like that separation that we've reached in the cast, where there's a little bit of our own personality in there and like what we think about the thing, but we're also presenting the facts as they are presented to the world through Twitter or Facebook posts or whatever it is. There's a good delineation between, here are the facts of the situation, here's what the current members of the cast think about that situation. I think we've reached a really nice balance of that over the last sort of year or two of the cast.
Oh, good. And finally, Jamie.
I mean, I think both Iain and Sam have made some excellent examples. I mean, that's very kind of for you to say that about me, Iain. I mean, I feel like you do the exact same for me. Yeah, you know, it sounds stupid, but I completely agree, because there are times I will go off on maybe sometimes not people. You know, maybe I am slightly more of a back seat at times. As I joke about just making lots of sarcastic comments, and sometimes that's true, and sometimes I just like I don't know what to say to this. I think one thing that immediately sticks in my head, I don't know about proud of the way, but I think it was an interesting challenge. Let's put it that way. I think it was last year, and it was 3 very, very hard news stories straight away, which was somebody who was doing a Kickstarter preview for a game and was dressed in a racist fashion for an East Asian person.
Yeah.
Then it was, then I believe it was Phil Eklund, the creator of PAX Premier. No, it wasn't PAX Premier. It was creator of a number of games. I'm afraid I can't remember the names of his games right now, because to be honest, I don't give the man the oxygen of publicity, let alone the oxygen of oxygen. That's not nice. I just don't think about him. And there was also Danielle Tashini.
Yeah.
And it was 3 of them. And I don't remember if Jeff Bergen was in that episode as well.
I don't think so, but there were 2 or 3 casts in a row where we covered that stuff. Yeah, quite a bit.
And I don't want to say proud, but it was just us all sitting beforehand going, right, because I think this is when Ian Chandler was there as well, and going, right, how are we going to do this? We'll split this up into 3 and we'll take it. And the fact we were going, we are giving you the fact. We're not going to colour this and go, this person's been a right prick. No, that's colouring it, and that's bias. Give the facts as we have seen them, as they're reporting as truthfully as we can. And there's nothing to say that'll add to that, because if you try and start offering opinions on it, sometimes it just feels like you're trying to gild the lily. You don't need to say anything. Just let their actions and what they've said and what they've done speak for themselves.
That's quite wonderful and very, very well put. I think it's time to draw things to a close, gentlemen. I'd like to thank Iain and Jamie for asking me along. I don't know if Sam did. I'm pretty sure he did by proxy as well. So it's been a delight to be here.
It's been lovely to have you along, Richard. Thanks very much for coming along and helping us out with this one.
That's brilliant. Now, if you are listening along tonight and you like what you have listened, and there's a couple of ways that you can actually help the Giant Brain podcast, and the best thing to do is to share the podcast, tell other people about it, shout it from the rooftops, hand out self-crayoned leaflets to people in the post office as you're meeting them, as you're posting board games to other people out there. You can also drop us a review, and you can also rate them on iTunes. Now, it's very, very important that you do not give these people... do not give these people 1 star, because you will break their hearts. But do not give them 10 stars on iTunes, because that will make them big-headed. Give them something in the middle, like a 5, because it's average, and they are a little bit average. But you can also join them in Discord as well.
There is also one person. There is one photo of me with it looks like I have an absolutely massive head. I don't. It just seems like I have a massive head.
He does, folks, in real life. Massive head. Huge.
It's brilliant. So you can join them on the Discord, which I'm not. The links will be in the show notes. You can go to Twitter, which is twitter.com/giantbrain. You can join them on Instagram, which is giantbrainuk. You can join them on Facebook, which is facebook.com/giantbrain. Go to the website, which is giantbrain.co.uk, or if you want to email them about news, views, or Huey Lewis in the news, then you can email them on giantbrainuk@gmail.com. There's only one more thing to do. It's a goodbye from Sam. Say goodbye, Sam.
Goodbye.
Thank you very much for coming along, Sam. It's been lovely.
No, thank you very much. I'm gonna sneak back off into the walls.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh.
And I'm gonna watch you playing games. I'll be there.
Now.
It's a
I'll
goodbye
be there.
from Jamie. Say goodbye.
I'm always there.
Goodbye, Jamie.
It's a goodbye from Ian. Say goodbye, Ian.
Goodbye, Ian.
And it's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe, roll sixes, and keep your eyes on the giant brain as it keeps its eye on the news for you. But until the next time, goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.